Welcome to the Responsible Raw Materials Podcast. My name is Dr. Sarah Gordon, and I am truly honoured to be your guide through this podcast series. This podcast is all about raw materials, something that, whether we realise it or not, sits at the heart of absolutely everything we do. From the buildings we live in to the food that we eat, none of it would exist without raw materials. And yet, for something so fundamental, we don't talk about it nearly enough. Or perhaps more accurately, we don't talk about it in a way that connects all the dots. Because raw materials isn't just about mining or recycling, it's not just about agriculture, it's a system, a complex, interconnected system that spans geology, engineering, finance, communities, governments, and ultimately all of us. And that is what this podcast is here to explore. By way of background, I'm a geologist by training and a risk management and sustainability specialist by profession, which means I spend a lot of my time thinking about how decisions are made, how risks are understood or misunderstood, and how those decisions shape outcomes, sometimes in ways we don't fully anticipate. And over the years, I found myself coming back to the same question again and again. Are we really using our need for raw materials in the most responsible way as we possibly could do? Not just environmentally, but socially, economically, and systemically. Because the reality is, we're facing some pretty significant challenges. We need more materials than ever before to support the energy transition. We need to reduce and perhaps enhance some of the environmental aspects around our mining operations. And we need to ensure communities benefit, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And we need to do all of that in a world that is, let's be honest, not always aligned. Different stakeholders, different incentives, different priorities. And sometimes it feels like everyone is talking, but not necessarily listening. So, the aim of this podcast is simple and also not simple at all. We just want to connect the dots, to bring together voices from across the entire raw materials ecosystem, people who might not normally sit in the same room, let alone have the same conversation. We'll be speaking to engineers and geologists, investors and financiers, community leaders and social specialists, policymakers, sustainability experts, operators on the ground, and people who are, quite frankly, just trying to make things work in very complex environments. And we're not just going to talk about the success stories, we're going to talk about the challenges, the tensions, the trade offs, the things that don't quite work the way we'd like them to. Because if we're going to move forward, we need to be honest about where we are. This is not going to be a lecture series. Instead, it's going to be a set of conversations. Sometimes those conversations will be technical, sometimes they'll be strategic, and sometimes they'll be incredibly human. We'll talk about what responsible mining actually looks like in practice, how investment decisions shape outcomes on the ground, why risk management often sits at the centre of everything but doesn't always get used effectively, how communities experience these projects and what benefit really means, and what the energy transition requires in terms of materials and what that means for the future. And importantly, we'll hear from people with different perspectives. Not everyone will agree, and that's the whole point. Because progress doesn't come from everybody thinking in the same way. It comes from understanding the differences and working through them. Now, I did say at the start that one of the aims of this podcast is to connect the dots and maybe, just maybe, make a difference in the world. And yes, I appreciate that sounds slightly ambitious for a podcast, possibly slightly ridiculous. But at the same time, if we don't aim high, what are we doing? Because this space matters. The decisions we make about raw materials today will shape the success of the energy transition and digitalization, the resilience of our economies, the well-being of communities, and the state of the environment for generations to come. So if this podcast can play even a small role in improving understanding, sparking better conversations, or helping people see things from a different perspective, then I think it's worth doing. And I suppose, on a more personal level, this matters to me because I've seen both sides of it. I've seen the potential for raw materials to enable incredible things, But I've also seen where things don't quite work, where the risks aren't fully understood, where decisions are made in silos, where good intentions don't always translate into good outcomes. And that is frustrating. But it's also motivating because it means there's still so much opportunity to do better. Over the coming episodes, you'll hear from a wide range of guests, people with very different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. Some are working at the cutting edge of technology and innovation. Some are deeply embedded in communities and operations. Some are shaping the financial and policy landscape. And all of them, in their own way, are part of this system. So, whether you're already working in this space or just curious about how it all fits together, I hope you'll find something in these conversations that challenges, informs, or inspires you. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and welcome to the Responsible Raw Materials podcast.